You know, sometimes you get in a product for review and there's really just not a whole lot to say. And with the 1STPLAYER Firerose mechanical keyboard, that's kind of the case. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Hello everybody and welcome to Tech Uploaded. I am Chris as always, and today I'm taking a look at yet another keyboard. I feel like it's raining keyboards around here lately, especially budget keyboards. And that's not a bad thing because the more budget keyboards that you have out there, the better. So before I really get into this 1STPLAYER Firerose mechanical keyboard, let's kind of hit on the different keyboard categories, at least in my opinion. I find that there's about 3 different price ranges you kind of hit with keyboards, and you got to decide which one you're in when you're shopping. So you've got the sub 30, the sub 50, and then the $100 plus. And it seems like that's kind of where things fall most of the time. So your under $30 keyboards are typically your membrane keyboards, your keyboards that are mechanical-like, where they use some interesting little like tweaks and things to the standard membrane keyboard to kind of mimic the mechanical feel like the other keyboard I looked at from 1STPLAYER. Then you have the sub $50 point. There you usually do get mechanical switches, as you do with this keyboard, but they're typically clones of the Cherry MX switch variety. Then you have the $100 plus. Now, the $100 plus is kind of where things were when I first started getting into mechanical keyboards, and there weren't really a whole lot of other options. At that time, you pretty much knew you were going Cherry MX, and you had to decide if you're going to do brown or you're going to do blue. And that was it. Well, those switches are still around, and most of the ones that are clones go for those switches, but you have Cherry MX blue, brown, red, clear. Then you have Romer G from Logitech. I mean, there's all these different keys, and those fall into that usually over $100 price point. You also tend to get things like macro keys and RGB backlighting that you can program to different keys, and extra buttons on the keyboard, and gaming features, and lots of multimedia stuff. So if you really want to make an investment in a keyboard, that's kind of where you're looking at. Today I'm going to focus this review on the sub $50 market. That's kind of how I'm going to judge this based on what else is available. If you go on Amazon and you look at keyboards around $50, you're going to be overwhelmed very quickly. You're going to find a lot of different switch names that you probably don't recognize. Now, this is like the OUTEMU switches that are in here. They're basically clones of the MX Blue, and by the clickiness, you can tell that is the case. I used this keyboard for a week, and I was trying to actually get my hands on one from Monoprice as well, because the Monoprice keyboard is the closest thing to this that I could find. There's a lot of keyboards on there that kind of go over the top, and they start throwing in some gamer-esque stuff, and it's just kind of gimmicky, and some of them claim to be RGB, and then they're not. So this keyboard and the one from Monoprice were the two that I legitimately would look at if I was in this price point, because they're just very simple the way they look, and I like the way that they're set up, and they're not flashy at all, and they use the same switch technology. But I talked to somebody that uses the Monoprice keyboard, and they said that it kind of sounds like it's very similar to this one, and that's a good thing. No frills, just gets the job done. So after a week of use with this keyboard, I honestly can't tell a difference between these, clone switches and actual MX Blue. I used blue switches for a long time at work until someone moved in across the hall from me, and I had to stop using it because they said it was too loud, which in the case of blue switches is definitely the case. And then I moved over to brown. But honestly, this keyboard feels fine. It's a very simple look looking at the keyboard. The key layout is standard, which I really do appreciate. The last keyboard I looked at, the keys were a little bit different as far as the backspace key was concerned. That threw me off. I don't like when keyboard layouts change at all. You do have a numpad on here. And then you get into the backlighting. Now, some keyboards claim to be RGB, and then they pull what this one's doing, and they just have the kind of rainbow effect. This one doesn't say that on the Amazon page. It just says that it's backlit. But you can see that the backlight does change colors as it goes across the keyboard. You can hit a button and turn on an effect for that. And then there is another button on the keyboard to actually turn the backlighting off altogether. So if you're not a big fan of all that light bleeding through, because it definitely does come out from underneath the keys, then you can turn that off. The layout of the keyboard, as far as how it looks, is kind of in line with a lot of the other mechanicals, where you do have that kind of open area on the bottom. Some people love that, some people hate it. You do have to be a little careful that stuff doesn't get up underneath of there. But other than that, I think it's just a really nice clean look. You have the multimedia keys along the top, so there is a function button that you can push down, and then it does activate those keys functions, such as being able to open your music app or adjust your volume or skip music or open your calculator, the usual stuff. Now, as far as the build quality goes in this keyboard, it feels pretty solid. I can be rough with it. I can't tell if it's plastic or metal. It kind of sounds like maybe both. I don't know. The Amazon page isn't super descriptive, but the feet on this feel great, and I really appreciate that because I hate when the feet break on keyboards because I love to have them elevated. That's a good thing for me. I enjoy that quite a bit. The space bar and the enter key feel just as solid as the rest, so that's a nice improvement over some of the cheaper keyboards. I mean, really, it's a mechanical keyboard with clone switches. There's not a whole lot to really say here. But like I said in the beginning, that's a good thing because you don't want to be saying a whole lot about a keyboard because typically it's going to be negative. So if you're on a budget and say you're a system builder and you're looking to save some money but you don't want to step all the way down to a membrane switch, or maybe you're somebody that thinks you might want to invest in a nice expensive mechanical keyboard but you don't want to take the plunge until you know if you're really going to like how the switches feel, then I think there is definitely a market here for this 1STPLAYER Firerose keyboard. But shop around, see what's out there. At this price point, kind of the sky is the limit. Now personally, I've tried 2 different keyboards that kind of fall into this price point. One of them was the older version of the Monoprice mechanical keyboard, and it was fine, but the newer one is that it's got a cleaner look, and then this one, and on both of them, no problems whatsoever. So I'm more than comfortable recommending this keyboard if you are looking for something that comes in under $50. Do be aware that right now on Amazon, this keyboard is $45, but for some odd reason, the black version of it is $70. I do not think this keyboard is worth $70. At that price point, you may as well step up to MX switches. For $45, however, I do recommend this. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click on that subscribe button. You can also follow me on my social media network things, like Twitter and Instagram at Tech Uploaded. And you can also join the Facebook conversation over at facebook.com/Tech Uploaded. And finally, you can shoot me an email at techuploaded@gmail.com. And you know the drill. Don't be a stranger. Check back soon.